At 2:17 on a freezing Thursday morning, someone knocked hard on my apartment door. When I opened it, my younger sister Sienna was standing there, pale and shaking. She was holding the keys to my SUV, and the first thing I noticed was the damage. One headlight was gone. The front bumper was scraped badly, and a thin red streak ran across the hood. "Lena, I need you to help me," she whispered. I looked at the vehicle, then back at her. "What happened?" Her eyes filled with panic. She said a man had suddenly stepped into the road. She insisted she barely touched him, but after a few seconds of silence, she admitted the part that made my stomach tighten. She had driven away. Before I could say another word, our mother, Marissa, rushed inside. She didn't ask whether the injured man was alive. She didn't ask where Sienna had been. She grabbed my arm and said, "Just tell them you were driving." I stared at her, thinking I had misunderstood. Then my father, Daniel, arrived. He closed the door behind him and spoke in the same calm voice he always used when he wanted something terrible to sound reasonable. "Sienna has a campaign," he said. "You don't." That sentence told me everything. For years, my family had treated Sienna like the daughter whose future mattered most. She was 33, ambitious, popular, and preparing for a major city council campaign built around public safety and responsible leadership. I was the daughter they barely talked about. They believed I had disappeared into an ordinary government job after disappointing them. They had no idea that 3 weeks earlier, I had taken an oath inside a federal courthouse and begun serving as a judge. Sienna looked around my small apartment, noticed my old sweatshirt, and gave me a nervous smile. "Who would even believe you?" she asked. She still thought I was the weak one in the family. What she didn't know was that her biggest mistake had already been recorded. My SUV had captured far more than the collision. And before that night was over, the evidence would begin telling a very different story from the one my family wanted me to tell. The evidence was already there, but my family didn't know that yet. They only knew they had one problem. Me. My father, Daniel, pulled a chair closer and lowered his voice. "Think carefully, Lena. If Sienna goes down, the campaign is finished. Everything she's worked for disappears." I looked at him. "And if I lie?" He didn't answer immediately. "My mother, Marissa, did. You're her sister. You protect family." I almost laughed, but nothing about that moment was funny. Sienna stood near the window, staring at the damaged SUV. She had changed from frightened to calculating. That scared me more than her panic had. Then she said something I would never forget. "Just say you borrowed the SUV earlier. Nobody needs to know the exact time." So they weren't asking me to help her anymore. They were building a story. A story where I became the driver, Sienna became confused, and everyone could walk away pretending nothing serious had happened. But there was one problem they had completely overlooked. My SUV had been moving through the city that night, and every movement had left a digital trail. Before sunrise, I received a notification confirming that the vehicle's emergency system had preserved the impact data. I said nothing. I simply watched my family continue their lie. They believed silence meant weakness. They didn't realize I was giving them enough rope to expose themselves. And then at 6:15 that morning, Sienna made the decision that would change everything. At 6:15, Sienna called the police. I was standing in my kitchen when I heard her speaking quietly in the hallway. Her voice sounded shaky, but the words were carefully chosen. She told the officer she wasn't completely sure who had been driving. Then she mentioned me. She said I had access to the SUV. She suggested that I might have taken it that night. I stood completely still. She had already asked me to lie for her. Now she was creating a backup story in case I refused. A few hours later, detectives came to speak with me. I didn't hide anything. I told them exactly what happened after Sienna arrived at my apartment. I explained that she had admitted driving the SUV and had asked me to take responsibility. Then I told them something my family had never known. I wasn't simply working in government, I was a federal judge. The detective paused for a moment, then asked whether I understood that my position could make the situation more complicated. "I understand," I said. "That's exactly why I'm telling you everything." I gave them the security contact, connected to my vehicle, and told them to obtain the original records themselves. The investigator then showed me what they already had. A camera had captured my SUV near the area where Sienna had been that night. Another recording placed the vehicle moving far too fast before the collision. Then came the detail that made my chest tighten. Sienna had already suggested that I might have been behind the wheel. She had tried to place me inside her story before the evidence could speak. When I returned home, my parents were waiting in the dining room. My father closed the door behind me. "You need to fix this," he said. I looked at him calmly. "No, Dad, she does." For the first time, nobody in that room knew what to say. Then my father asked the question they had been avoiding all morning. "What exactly did the vehicle record?" I looked at Sienna. She already knew the answer mattered, but she still didn't know how much had been captured. Sienna's face changed the moment I asked what she thought the SUV had recorded. For the first time that morning, she looked less like a confident campaigner and more like someone realizing she had made a terrible mistake. My father stepped closer. "Lena, this doesn't have to become bigger than it already is." "It already is," I said. I opened the security application on my phone. A map appeared on the screen showing the SUV's route from that night. The system had preserved the impact time, the vehicle's movement, and several pieces of automatic safety data. Then I showed them the preservation notice. The files had already been secured. Sienna stared at the screen. "What files?" I looked directly at her. The exterior recording, the interior audio, the location history, and the images captured around the collision. Nobody moved. My mother slowly sat down. Sienna whispered, "You knew?" "I knew the vehicle had recorded the impact. I didn't know exactly what it had captured until the system preserved everything." My father tried to remain calm. "You can't use this against your own sister." "I'm not using anything against her," I replied. "The evidence exists because of what happened." Then I played the audio. The room went silent. Sienna heard her own voice, the same voice that had told me a man appeared suddenly, the same voice that had admitted she drove away. And then came the part she never expected anyone else to hear, her request that I take the blame. Her face went completely white. My mother began crying, but I wasn't finished. The investigators already had the vehicle data, nearby camera footage, and witness information. The story my family had created was no longer a private family secret. It was evidence. And now Sienna had one choice left: tell the truth herself or let the truth speak for her. Sienna stared at the phone as if the screen had just exposed a completely different person. My father was the first to speak. "There has to be another way." I shook my head. There was another way. She could have stayed at the scene. Nobody answered. By then, investigators had enough information to reconstruct what happened. The damaged SUV, the recorded conversation, the vehicle's route, nearby cameras and witness accounts all pointed in the same direction. Sienna had caused the collision. She had left. Then she had tried to make me responsible. The campaign that once presented her as a leader, built on honesty, suddenly became impossible to defend. My father, who had spent years protecting her public image, couldn't talk his way around recorded evidence. My mother kept saying that we were family, but I finally understood something I had spent years refusing to accept. Being someone's sister does not mean becoming their shield. Sienna eventually had to face the consequences of what she had done. The campaign collapsed, and the investigation continued without the protection my family had expected me to provide. As for me, I cooperated fully and stepped away from anything that could create even the appearance of a conflict. My career survived, but my relationship with my family never returned to what it had been. Months later, I sat alone in my chambers after returning to work. I thought about that night. They had believed my quiet life meant I had achieved nothing. They were wrong. The greatest thing I had finally learned wasn't about law or power. It was about boundaries. For years, I had mistaken sacrifice for love. That night taught me the difference. Sometimes protecting someone means helping them face the truth instead of helping them escape it. My family wanted me to carry a lie so Sienna could keep her future. Instead, I chose the truth, and for the first time in my life, I chose myself too.